Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Freedom Network once again. I'm your host, Gary Rosenberg, and I'm going to be here to guide you for the next hour or so while we delve and talk about all kinds of neat stuff. Again, continuing our conversation on the media. We had a great time last week talking with you about the media, and there was so much information about the media that we had to do it on 2 shows. And I will get a guest in here, and we will talk more about the media. I'd like to get a media person in here to talk about the media. But welcome to the Freedom Network, everybody. We're glad that you tuned in. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter at the Freedom Network, timandgary@gmail.com. You can certainly look us up on Facebook on the Freedom Network. We want your input. We demand your input. I demand your input. If you're watching, I want to hear from you. I like all of the various things that I've been hearing and looking at and viewing in my email. Some positive, some negative. Doesn't matter. Bring me the info. All right. We've been waiting all week to air this for you. And we wanted to continue the story. We had led last time with a Harvard University study for a period of time in 2007, around elections and all that stuff, where they just continue to study. And we pulled out a whole bunch of stuff that really showed that the media is full of crap. That's what it really shows, okay? They have a clear agenda. They will do whatever they can do to push it. They will twist, bend, lie, cheat, steal. And you've got Fox over here, we learned, and you've got everybody else over here. And they're all left-leaning. It's undeniable. And when you have an organization like Harvard University telling you that something's leaning to the left, considering how far Harvard leans to the left, I think that you should take heed in that. So I continue to look online. And have you ever been on Free Republic? It's a good website. It is a good website. The Independent Journal is another one that I try to get some information from. I do go to CNN. I do go to Fox News. I try not to go to MSNBC because it's disgusting. I can't even fathom how the station is still on the air. I just don't get it. Al Gore's network. They can't make a go of it. They're going to sell it. I did hear that they were selling it to a Middle Eastern company. Same company, I believe. Wait, hang on. Al Jazeera, I believe, or a subsidiary of that is going to buy it. But then again, Fox News has a huge interest as far as stock-wise that does come from that part of the country also. I mean, of the world, excuse me. This is a capitalist country. That's going to happen. How the Vice President of the United States decides to sell his company to a foreign entity, does that bother me? Yeah, it bothers me. It does. But that's a story for another day. Free Republic, pretty neat website. They had a whole bunch of stuff, examples of bias in the media. Better read than informed was one that they had, and they say read, it's R-E-D, okay? And they're talking about one of the worst examples of liberal media bias would be the media's steadfast refusal to accurately report the monstrous evils that took place in the Soviet Union, even still to this day. It didn't matter how many millions the Soviets were killing, be it Stalin or his successors. The media even awarded itself a Pulitzer Prize through the lies of one Walter, and I want to get his name right here. Who are you, Walter? You're Walter Duranty, a New York Times columnist that was a shill for the murderous Soviet Union. These were positive stories that were coming out. We didn't understand. Who grew up in the 80s? Lots of people. You don't remember? Do you really not remember? How about Castro's cheerleaders? The Soviets, they weren't the only communists that the American liberal media liked. Fidel Castro, all right, never an unkind word for this guy. To this day, you've got people in our government that are sympathetic toward him, which is disgusting. Okay, this is a communist. This is a guy that held missiles on his land to be used against us. This is a guy that loves and breathes socialism and government control. Where are the negative stories about him? Why not back it up? Embargo-wise, travel ban-wise. It should be punitive if you want to wipe me off the face of the planet. Yeah, I think it's okay that we take some punitive measures against you. That's what I say. You want me to repeat it? I'm willing to fight for my freedom. Fidel Castro. Can't find any really negative or objective stories about him. I searched. I even made myself a note I couldn't find one. Not on those stations. I could find them on Fox. But I want to preface and make everybody understand that I understand that Fox is biased also. But I am well aware that Fox is one. And the rest are biased. Very biased. The Vietnam War. All right, Paul Johnson writes, once the TV presentation of the war became daily and intense, it worked on the people, it worked as a whole, okay, and I'm quoting, against American interests. It generated the ideas that America was fighting a hopeless war. Not only did the media underplay or ignore any U.S. successes, it tended to turn the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese reservists into victories when they really weren't even victories. And this I was able to find proof of online. Google it. You'll find 7 different places. You can find stories that were reported as America loses. Fact comes out years later, America won that battle. Does this sound like Iraq under Bush? Because it does a lot to me. Like it or not, we went to war with Iraq. Like it or not, if you're a Democrat, your representatives probably voted to okay the war. Oh, wait, though. That was on false pretenses because we were sold a bill of goods about these weapons of mass destruction and all this and all that and blah, blah, blah. Maybe we were. Maybe we were. But it wasn't a conspiracy from Bush. If you really believe that Bush is going to hold a conspiracy together, these are people that on a daily basis would call Bush stupid, but yet at the same time he can manufacture a war, have at least 70 to 100 high-level ranking officials in on this scheme. No one's going to say anything, and it's not even going to come out years and years later. I don't care whether they found the weapons or not. They believe them to be there. John Kerry was against the war, wasn't he, before he was for the war? Colin Powell, the media loves this guy, right? He's a Republican, but he has spoken out against Republicans. So the media thinks he's wonderful. That's the only way the media gives you a positive story, is when you're a Republican and you speak out against Republicans. Plenty of positive. Our own Mr. Kennedy, the late senator. Media coverage for Ed Kennedy. This was interesting. Throughout his political life, right? One word. What would you sum up? If you had one word, Chappaquiddick, would that come to mind? Certainly would come to my mind. How is it possible that a sitting senator can be involved in the death of a young woman and never really face any consequences for that crime? If the law was too passive, where was the media? Where were they as the watchdogs to make sure that charges may be brought? If you left somebody in a car that was overturned in an accident, questionable whether alcohol was involved, and you just left, and this woman drowned, you think you'd be a U.S. Senator tomorrow? It's blatant. It's right in front of you. How do you not see it? They like to call Bush stupid. They would allow Bush to be called stupid on air. I remember being on the air on radio, and they were talking about Clinton, and they were talking about politicians of that era. And they called him a lot of names, man, right? They really did. The right wing, they did. Did he deserve them? Yeah, but he was. I mean, he was a philanderer. He's running around on his wife all the time. He's running around on you and me. We talked about it last week. They had to drag that out. But not until we saw Bush did I start to hear the stupid. The media got so caught up in it that they said he was stupid and that John Kerry was so smart. Remember how smart Kerry was? Well, it turns out, after a little digging was done, Bush had better grades in college than Kerry did. There's another thing that George Bush could do. He could fly a jet. I can't fly a jet. Can you? Because I don't know how you call a guy that can fly a jet stupid. You can say he's whacked out. I don't like his ideas. I can't stand his politics. But you're going to call him stupid? But the media allowed that to happen, and that's my point. They allowed a lie to be perpetuated. They allowed it to happen. They didn't challenge it, and it can kind of stick. You might have a case to call Dan Quayle stupid, but I don't even know if that would be true, because I'd have to research it first, because I'm a responsible person. And before I'm going to take to the airwaves about something like that, I'm going to research it. Robert Bork, Clarence Thomas, Elena Kagan. You remember these people? We're talking the Supreme Court now. 1987 and 1991, when Robert Bork and Clarence Thomas were respectively nominated to serve on the Supreme Court of the United States, both men were utterly destroyed in the press, vilified in the press. In the case of Bork, they were successful in preventing his nomination, but not so much with Clarence Thomas. On the other hand, when Elena Kagan was nominated by Obama to serve in the highest court in our land, the media went out of its way to ignore key factors in her career to facilitate her ascension into this job. Just for one instance, okay, when running as McCain's VP, Sarah Palin, the media reported that she engaged in book banning when she was mayor of Wasilla. But Elena Kagan actually ruled that book banning was okay. And the media ignored the story during her confirmation hearings. See, it's a double standard because they hated Sarah Palin. And let me tell you, she made some pretty good missteps, okay? She did. But see, I can say that. I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not afraid to sit here and tell you I'm no shill for a Republican Party. I think Bush was pretty damn good his first term. I think he was pretty lousy his second term. What infuriated me immensely was his stimulus package of $500 billion that Obama followed up with a full-blown $1 trillion that's gotten us nowhere. I wasn't a big fan of that. I wasn't a big fan of the fact that we seem to be fighting this war with no real end in sight except for nation building. I'm not for that. And I can sit here and I can tell you that. You're not going to hear that from somebody on MSNBC. You're not going to hear it because they do have an agenda. I don't have, you know what my agenda is? Your freedom. That's my agenda. Unbelievable. 1995, Oklahoma City bombing. Remember that. No guns were used, by the way. No guns. A lot of people killed. The media for years claimed the convicted Oklahoma City bomber Tim McVeigh was a Christian terrorist. Remember I said last week, you can say anything you want about Christians, totally fair game. It's an absurd claim, and I'll tell you why. He was an anti-government activist. He did not use any religion to justify anything that he did. This claim is still existent. Came up recently in a piece by a left-wing journalist, Juan Williams. McVeigh also was part of this white militia myth, not true. Fear that the media and President Bill Clinton drummed up in the 90s with little to no evidence. You know what Tim McVeigh was? A psycho. That's what he was. But they saw an opportunity and they acted before they had the facts. This is what they do, as long as it's in their interest, of course. Media falsely reports Bush lost in Florida, 2000. As voting for president in 2000 was still going on in Florida's GOP-leading Panhandle. Several networks reported that Bush had already lost the Sunshine State, even though the polls were not closed. Not supposed to do that. But they didn't like the exit polls, and they took to the airwaves a little early. Oops. This cost Bush, they estimate, some 10,000 votes. From what they could estimate from polling of people that did not vote, about 10,000 of them that they could find, their answer was not, yeah, I'm registered, but I didn't want to vote. Their answer was, yeah, we heard that the guy lost anyway, so what were we going to go out and vote for? Now we know that. That doesn't get reported, though, does it? Who polices the media? Who reports on the media? Freedom Network will. So, Bush would have beat Gore if they didn't do that. I firmly believe that. We were talking hanging chads for weeks. We had a recount all the time. There were segments in the news about recounts, but yet every time they recounted it, people, Bush won. Was there even a count that Bush didn't win? Maybe there was. Maybe there was one. I don't know. But if there was, it was one. They counted this thing, what, a dozen times? They wanted to keep counting it until they got the desired results, which would be that Bush lost, but he didn't lose. Even when they took to the airwaves too early, you know, scummy, scummy, scummy move. Real scummy move here, folks. Let's talk about the KKK double standard. This is an interesting look. We're going to talk about this one. We'll go look at a feature in a few minutes. Trent Lott and Robert Byrd. Let's talk about those two people, okay? Even though Democrat Party is the party from which the KKK was born, do your homework, get on your computer, get off your butt, and educate yourself. Republicans freed the slaves. The KKK was born out of the Democrat Party. Two facts. We don't talk about them much today. The media constantly burdens Republicans with being Klan members. This is absurdity. In 2002, GOP Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott from Mississippi attended a retirement party for longtime Senator Strom Thurmond, famed for his anti-civil rights activism of the early 60s. I'm not a big fan, but let's let the story unfold. The media, however, instantly whipped up the story into national news, okay? What Trent said was if the rest of the country had followed our lead, we wouldn't have had all these problems over all these years either. Probably not a smart thing to say. Maybe he should have been called to task on saying something like that. There is no place for racism in my mind. I can think of a million reasons to hate somebody. Religious beliefs is not on the radar. I don't think it's on most people's radar, but the media wants to keep it there. They want it there. So, Lott's poor choice of words cost him his powerful position. He had to resign, folks. Some say that it's good that someone with a racist past would be turned out of power. The media did its job properly. But if defeating racism was really the media's goal, and this is where I call you to task, why did it never attack Senator Robert Byrd, who became the longest living senator in history? But they don't want to talk about him. You know who he is? Do you know who he is? Do you know what his past is? If this is your first time watching the Freedom Network and you normally get your news at ABC and CNN and MSNBC and NBC and CBS, if that's where you're going, you probably don't know this. So hold on, let me tell you the rest of the story. Because, after all, Robert Byrd was an actual member of the KKK in the 30s and 40s. Fact. He served as a recruiter. Fact. But the media never questioned him on any of this, on any of his membership in the KKK. Not in our current time, not until 2005, right before his death, where they allowed him an opportunity to denounce it. But the whole time this guy is in the Senate, free pass, and some decades ago, he was recruiting people and a member, an active member of the KKK. I say that there's room in our government for all kinds, and that's what makes America great. There is no room for an ex-KKK member in any government that I would want to see ruling over me. And I mean ruling, and I say that on purpose because that's what the government does these days in America. They rule over us. Okay, I'm all worked up now. Let's take a look at a feature, get some interesting stuff. We'll come back and we'll finish up our conversation on media bias on the Freedom Network.
What you're about to see should really alarm you for reasons that we'll demonstrate fully a little bit later. All right, here we go. Here's CNN reporter Susan Rosgen providing the kind of unbiased, no-bull reporting that CNN prides itself on.
You know, what is this supposed to mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, he's a fascist. The pirates...
Wait, why do you say he's a fascist? He's the president of the United States.
He's a fascist.
Do you realize how offensive that is?
I think he's a fascist.
Okay, stop right there for a second. Look, my understanding was that reporters were supposed to report the news, not offer their opinions on it. But I will say this. It is appropriate to get upset about comparing the President of the United States to Adolf Hitler. To do so not only denigrates the president, a democratically elected official, to the level of one of history's greatest monsters, it also does something much, much worse. It trivializes the horror of what Adolf Hitler actually did, which is to brutally murder 6 million Jews in gas chambers and plunge the world into the second greatest disaster it has ever seen. 50 million or more people dead in World War II, second only, of course, to the 100 million plus killed by various communist regimes throughout the 20th century. So, while supposedly objective journalists shouldn't be offering their opinions on anything, if you're going to get upset about something, at least it should be something really offensive, like comparing the president to Adolf Hitler. Now, as it turns out, Susan had once before confronted this vile practice. Thanks to newsbusters.org, we can get her take on it in this voiceover report from 2006.
They and their teachers say more money is needed to fix the levees, and they hope the president would stop by after his meeting with business leaders. But while a lookalike showed up with a wad of cash, Mr. Bush did not.
Did you get that? Her quote was, while a lookalike showed up with a wad of cash, Mr. Bush did not. So we have a giant papier-mâché head of George Bush with devil horns, a Hitler mustache, and a Hitler haircut, and that's a lookalike. But somebody says that President Obama is Hitler, and you get...
Why be so hard on the president of the United States, though, with such an offensive message?
So why the difference in the selective outrage? Well, one of these presidents she voted for personally, and the other one she personally despises. And that's what determines what gets on the air, and that's what determines what makes up the narrative, her personal belief system. Now watch as Susan Rosgen takes her professional, utterly unbiased, no-bull, just-the-facts attitude to another gentleman who is exercising the dissent that the left has told us this whole time is the highest form of patriotism.
Okay, let's see, you're here with your 2-year-old, and you're already in debt. Why are you here today, sir?
Because I hear a president say that he believed in what Lincoln stood for. Lincoln's primary thing was he believed that people had the right to liberty and they had the right...
Sir, what does this have to do with taxes? What does this have to do with your taxes? Do you realize that you're eligible for a $400 credit?
Finish my point.
Okay, I want to stop for a second. Did you hear her trying to sell this stimulus package to this poor, ignorant, non-network journalist Rube in the yellow shirt who dares worry about this generational theft? She's basically saying to him, you're getting $400 in exchange for this unprecedented banditry, you knuckle-dragging idiot. What more do you trailer park living right-wing extremists want?
Did you know that the state of Lincoln gets $50 billion out of these stimulus? That's $50 billion for this state, sir.
Ma'am, can you stop this, sir? Hold on.
Okay, well, Kira, we'll move on over here. I think you get the general tenor of this. It's anti-government, anti-CNN, since this is highly promoted by the right-wing conservative network, Fox. And since I can't really hear much more, and I think this is not really family viewing, toss it back to you, Kira.
Look, here at the studio, we watched this clip with our mouths hanging open. We'd always known that this bias exists. Somewhere between 85 to 95% of journalists describe themselves as liberal. We just don't often get to see it as clearly as this media bias, and it gets worse. Now, by happy chance, one of those angry, bitter, angry, rage-filled, angry average Americans who were at the Tea Party protest happened to have a video camera, and the guys at foundingbloggers.com picked it up. This tape starts just as CNN ended its coverage. Watch this.
What if someone said to you, well, your elected officials voted for this stimulus package?
They all need to be thrown up. They're all Congress. It's not just, this is not just Democrats. It's not Republicans. It's all of them. All of them. It's Congress. Bush voted for all this. Obama voted for all of it.
It doesn't really matter to you whether it's Republican or Democrat.
Absolutely not. And most people who are here do not believe that it's just the Republicans or just the Democrats.
And what group are you with that brought you out
Hey,
here?
you want to hear
I'm
the
a
truth?
suburban, self-employed woman. I don't have a group.
No, I mean, how did you find out about it then?
Oh, it's all over the news. It's everyone. We all
It wasn't
do.
like online, you know.
Oh yeah, it's all over online. What do you think the internet is for? Are you trying to play stupid?
You know, you really don't need to be so antagonistic.
Well, what do you say to that? There's just nothing left to say. And what's wrong with this picture? Well, CNN, here's a little thought for you. Your official bio of Susan Rosjan on the CNN website says she has a bachelor's degree in English from Montana State University. Now, Montana State is a fine school, but next time you guys decide to hire a journalist, you might want to give them one of those little one-page frequently asked question sheets that explain how traditionally you ask the background questions first, and then you do the reporting second. Okay, so look, where's the real harm in all this media bias? Why does it really matter? Well, during the 2004 election between George Bush and John Kerry, Newsweek magazine's Evan Thomas had this to say, quote, let's talk a little media bias here. They're going to portray Kerry and Edwards as being young and dynamic and optimistic, and there's going to be this glow about them, a collective glow, the two of them. That's going to be worth maybe 15 points. Now, that was in 2004. Now, even though Evan Thomas talked about Kerry and Edwards as being portrayed as having a glow about them, the media never really fully fell in love with John Kerry. They just gave him 15 points at the polls because they were the media. That's what good liberals do. It's the right thing to do. You know, it's kind of a sense of duty on their part. But 4 years later, the real deal would emerge. Now, you want to talk about a candidate with a glow that they can really get behind. Well, now, 2004 was nothing compared to the water that the media carried lovingly and with wide-eyed adoration for the true Messiah, to which candidate Kerry, in retrospect, was merely a long-faced John the Baptist. I mean, if this guy was worth an additional 15 percentage points in the polls, then who can put a price on this? But let's just say that even with the Messiah, the media bias alone, forgetting the throbbing, constant drumbeat from Hollywood, late-night talk shows, the music industry, academia, all the rest, let's just say that Obama has the same benefit of liberal bias that Evan Thomas, in an unguarded moment, was ready to credit to John Kerry. Well, if you take a look at the 2008 electoral map and you remove 15 points of media bias from Barack Obama, you will get this result. Obama carries Vermont with 3 electoral votes, and D.C. with 3 electoral votes, and, well, that's all he carries. That's all he gets. Because in no other state was Obama's margin of victory greater than the 15 points of media bias that the press themselves admit that they were willing to give him. And if you take that press bias away, John McCain wins by a score of 532 to 6. Ladies and gentlemen, we not only have an aristocratic imperial Congress for life that no longer represents the will of the American people, we also have in place of the unbiased, dispassionate watchdogs that they claim to be, a wildly partisan and utterly unethical press corps who decides over cocktails who should win elections and who should lose them, and then prepares the appropriate narrative which they sell to you as unbiased news. But the current product of CNN, Newsweek, and all the rest are as far from actual news reporting as our current Congress and federal government are from the ideals that the founders had in mind at the very birth of this great nation.
We're calling this segment of the John Gibson Show a media bias palooza, because we have assembled examples from just the last few days of the persistent media bias we always talk about, and Democrats will call me at 888-788-9910 and say, no, it doesn't exist. Or say, you, John, you're a conservative. You're a Republican. No, I'm a registered independent, but I think a conservative idea ought to be heard once in a while. And you know, There are times I think if I don't say it, you won't hear it. You know, I mean, I go to Texas and I have real conservatives yelling at me. What's going on with Fox? It's gotten so liberal. Can you have Geraldo put a cork in it? No, I cannot. But let me just walk down this row of examples of media bias. And the one that ought to tip you off every time you hear it is when you hear a liberal on the media say, I'm a regular guy. And you're a regular guy or gal. We're both just regular guys and gals. And what we want is what everybody wants.
The force for change that's out there, if you talk to people, if you talk to regular people, people like me, people like you, the idea of they want to change is a very, very powerful force.
Shut up.
I keep forgetting, Angry Rich, what is your beef with him?
It's Mike Barnacle.
Yeah, I know that is.
He pretends to be a man of the people. He grew up in Southie.
In Boston.
In reality, he's a Metro West Boston, a feet Chardonnay-sipping plagiarist phony.
Uh-huh. Well,
he's in the perfect place on MSNBC.
Without getting into the details, there's that trick. NBC has dropped any pretense of being an objective, unbiased news source anymore.
Resign.
Prime time.
They're putting him in prime time.
No, but I mean, they're putting him on the network.
Yeah, on the network. Exactly. They're going to stick him on the mother network.
Resign.
But his competitor over there, Bathtub Boy's competitor at MSNBC is Monkey Man. Who actually did that on his own show, and he's playing catch-up in the wildly left-wing partisan game.
Our second story tonight is the White House going to pull a Lucy again with the football trick all over again. For months, President Bush has been asking us to wait for a report from General Petraeus. How many times do we hear that phrase? Now we learned that the White House is going to write the report, the White House, and that the general will testify publicly before Congress only after the report's been written by Bush's people. Is this a sign of something we've seen before? Is the Bush administration going to politicize that critical September report instead of letting the general deliver a full and honest assessment to the American people? It looks like it.
You moron! Petraeus is Bush's people. He's the one Bush picked.
Before the fiddler has fled, before they ask us to pay the bill, and while we still have a chance.
That's 4 fingers of scotch there.
Twice. I'll have a third. Make it a 4-stack.
Light them up.
But that wasn't even the top of the hit parade for him. This one about the vice president pretty much takes the cake, Dick.
In 1994, Dick Cheney, of all people, said going into Baghdad would be a bad idea.
Once you got to Iraq and took it over and took down Saddam Hussein's government, then what are you going to put in its place?
Good question, Dick. Anyway, that was Cheney, by the way, back when he knew what was going on. And the question now is, that guy has led this president into doing exactly what he said would be a bad idea.
Good question, Dick.
Good question, Dick.
Good question, Dick.
Good question, Dick.
I'm offended.
Jesus. Is anybody at NBC listening?
Good question, Dick.
John Gibson of Fixed News, today's worst person in the world.
Always striving to be the worst to Bathtub Boy.
You should crawl off into a hole and die.
But the best to you. John Gibson on Fox News Talk.
Interesting stuff. Once again, all great stuff that you see put together by Tim. You do a great job with it. Folks, remember, timagary@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. Should you be a guest on this show? Do you have what it takes to be a guest on this show? If you do, then let me know, will you? Because we might just be able to make that happen for you. We like to have opposing views, but we want you to know your stuff. So we're going to have a few conversations first. I want it to be fair, and I don't want shills, and I'm not going to be like Bill Maher and set this thing up with weak Democrat, liberal, left-wingers. I don't want to do that, okay? I want the debate. Try to change my mind. Don't yell at me. Try to change my mind, okay? Maybe you'll be successful. You never know. Doubt it, but you might. timagary@gmail.com. Use it. Okay, back to the media. Double standards all over the place. We left talking about the KKK double standard before our feature segment, and I just wanted to backtrack to that for a minute. You know, it's very interesting how it's okay for Democrats to be racists, but it's not okay for Republicans to be racists. Case in point, in the last election, if you remember, and this will leave for you. This is going to be a little at home, a little homework for you all out there in the listening world and viewing world. Go on your computer and look up a certain person that just was running for president recently, and they belong to a golf club, membership at a country club, and there was something on that country club rock outside that wasn't quite right, and it was actually tried to have been covered up. Obviously, they knew it was not right to have it there, and I want you to find out. You email me your answers as to who that is, and we'll discuss it maybe a little bit further next show. But what's interesting is that this was front page news. It was all over the place. You couldn't get away from it. But nothing on the KKK involvement for years. I never knew that until the internet came out and you could start to find your own news. That's when I learned about that. And I even thought it must not be true. How could this be true that the media doesn't report on this stuff? You don't even hear about it on Fox. How about Rathergate? You know, it's funny. Everything now is gate. Everything's got to be gate. Remember? I mean, with Clinton had so many gates. Everything was a gate. All right? Well, Rathergate. Okay, in an effort to damage George Bush's 2004 run for the re-election, Rather, whose bias is pretty blatantly out there, okay, folks, floated a story based on forged documents that claim Bush had gone AWOL from his Texas Air National Guard unit back in 1973. The internet sleuths, though, realized that the documents purporting to have been created on a 1970s-era typewriter were actually made using a Microsoft computer font, and obviously these computers did not exist in 1973. Rather refused to admit the truth, though, and ultimately he lost his spot as anchor of CBS's nightly newscast. This put the internet on the map as a real force to be reckoned with. So here we have an actual situation where the bias was so obvious, but it was provable. And people got real upset. And what did we talk about before? You can only go so far in a profit business before the people are going to not watch. So they get rid of Dan Rather. Did they get rid of Dan Rather because Dan Rather was making up stories about George Bush and using a bully pulpit to hopefully derail his presidential re-election campaign? No. They got rid of him because he got caught. That's why they got rid of him. Look it up. I'm going to challenge you every single show. Get on the computer. Get on the television. Look things up. Find out for yourselves. Empower yourselves. That's what America's all about. The rights are with you to make it better. The responsibility is with you to make it better. The government has no money. They have your money. For them to give someone money, they have to take money. The government has nothing that it doesn't take from somebody else. Get involved. You're watching the Freedom Network. You're at home. Put the computer on. Get it on. Get on that Google. Get on those other search engines. Type in topics, questions. You'll find the junk on there is immense, but you can decipher through it. You'll find lies on the right. You'll find lies on the left, but you can get to the middle and find out the truth. But the sad thing about American media today in 2013 is that you can't rely on it for the truth. You got to go get it. So the Freedom Network challenges you. Get up off your butt and go find out the truth about the country that you live in. Anti-Tea Party bias. The leftist media really loves to hate the Tea Party, okay? They just despise the Tea Party. So, in one incident, the media assigned Obama as Hitler signs supporter at the Tea Party at an event to members themselves. So they attributed this Obama as Hitler sign as a Tea Party member. Fact, though, interesting when you have to mix facts into journalism. Oh, Gary, what are you doing that for? Why would you want to mix facts into a perfectly good story? The Obama Hitler posters actually belong to the extremist LaRouche organization, a group the Tea Party opposes. You know who Lyndon LaRouche is? That's number 2. That's number 2. On the computer. Google him. You see them on the side of the road sometimes with his picture. I pull over. I challenge them. They don't like it. Imagine that. But just like I told you about that in that other story about the Tea Party, I told you that story. They slant it, and they did that on purpose. People say, Gary, do you identify yourself as what? I identify myself as a conservative. I identify myself as a constitutionalist, as someone that believes it's not so much a living, breathing document, but it's a document that didn't grant us rights. The Constitution doesn't give you rights. The Constitution ensures your rights are guaranteed. They're your rights to begin with. I'm not a registered Democrat. I am a registered Republican. If I lived outside of Massachusetts, I may be a registered independent. I don't ever want the Democrat Party of Massachusetts to think I got his vote. I don't ever want the Democrat Party of Massachusetts to think I might have his vote. Because in the 23 years or whatever it is that I've been able to vote, I've not found a Democrat I wanted to vote for. I don't mind picking sides. Do I agree with everything the Republicans do? No. Of course I don't. As a matter of fact, like I said, I don't know if I'd have party affiliation if I was outside of this area. But I will tell you one thing right now. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in our personal rights. I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in the right to own a firearm. Believing in these things means I'm at great odds with the mainstream media because they don't believe in these things. And it's evident over the past almost 2 hours of show content that we've put together over the past 2 weeks about it. And I have more. I can't fit it all in. Sarah Palin's swift skirting. One of the early untrue reports on Palin was that her own baby, Trig, wasn't hers, but was really that of her daughter, Bristol. I mean, is this really what you're reporting on? Then there was the false accusation that Palin used her political power to push around an Alaska state trooper. The media even passed around false claim that she banned books. We talked about that. Didn't do it. You know, they said that she had banned books on the list. They weren't even published. At the time they were accusing her of banning a book, the book wasn't even published. In fact, there are hundreds of cases of media bias against Palin. It continues right on to this day. It's kind of interesting. Here's another gate for you. This is one of my favorite. You know, I got to tell you, I'm a very pro kind of environment guy. I don't have a problem with regulations to protect and safeguard the earth. Hell, I live on this earth. My children, my child, my son lives on this earth. His children are going to live on this earth. And hopefully their children will also live on this earth. I don't want to see it abused, but I do want to see accurate science applied to laws if you're making a law. I have no issues if we want to go and we want to invest in different types of alternative energy. But the investment should not be in companies like Solyndra that go belly up. The investments should be in technology, and then let the private sector run with the ball. You don't go prop up failing companies because they believe in left-wing ideology and contribute to your campaigns. exposed. So, the media establishment almost exclusively reported global warming from the point of view of religiously zealous I mean, this was like, it's like a religion. Okay? When thousands of emails were released to the public by hackers that proved that climate scientists were cooking the data and working with members of the media, especially in the BBC, okay, on the BBC, comes out of England, to sell global warming theories, the media tried its best to completely ignore this story. They did not get involved with this. You would hear about it maybe on a Fox, maybe on some Rush Limbaugh, or locally maybe Howie Carr, if he could get his hands on the info. But weeks went by before the first few people in the media mentioned these emails and put the lie to the consensus of global climate change. Thousands of more climate emails have been released recently. Thousands. Have you heard of them? You won't. Invest in technology. Become self-sufficient. Do you think I want to buy my oil from the Middle East? I say, for the love of God, get the oil we have. Don't make them drill 16, 20, 30, 40 miles offshore where they're dozens of miles deep and you have these terrible oil spills like we witnessed in recent history. Let them get closer so we can control this stuff. Ted Kennedy, big proponent of all this alternative energy, any liberal cause. It's great, it's wonderful. Great, well, we think that Nantucket Sound would be a great place to put these. Oh, no, whoa, can't do that, man. I might see that from my backyard. I don't want to do that. They're full of it. Al Gore and his carbon footprint. He's flying around the country in a 747 telling people not to pollute. Really? Are you an idiot? Because I'm not. Give me a break. Acorn. Videographer James O'Keefe unveiled video of members of several Acorn officials agreeing to help what they imagine was a pimp trying to get government breaks. This is really a whopper. Okay, he wanted a housing cost for his prostitutes. They ignore the story for weeks. Okay, Breitbart covered the story. Then the media would talk about it. Okay, they just won't talk about it if it doesn't serve their agenda. The Gabby Giffords shooting. From the moment that the crime against Representative Giffords became national news, members of the media began to blame her attack on the violent rhetoric of conservatives in general and the Tea Party movement in particular. A climate of violence perpetrated by the right was at fault, the media would lead you to believe. It later turned out that the shooter, Jared Lee, had no discernible political beliefs at all, and in fact had been targeting Giffords before the Tea Party movement ever started. Where's that story? Where is the story? Doesn't exist. And that's the problem, folks. This is the problem. John Edwards, infidelities. Another long line of stories that the media refused to cover is the John Edwards story. Edwards was the third runner-up for the Democratic Party nomination for president, blah, blah. You know all this stuff. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. He became John Kerry's VP. He ran again for president in 2008, and during the whole time, rumors of his infidelities were popping up all over the place. But they kept it down. They kept it down. Instead of reporting what they learned about Edwards, okay, they just kept it down. The media waited until Edwards was out of the running before they would drag, kicking and screaming like this to the story by reporters of the National Enquirer. The National Enquirer is going to direct and force the liberal media to talk about a story. You put that TV on and you tune in to those stations and you think you're getting real news, you got something else coming to you. Abu Ghraib. This story was portrayed by the left as a big problem perpetrated against Iraqi citizens by our soldiers. The fact is that this was an isolated incident. Never seemed to be noted, though, by the media that it was an isolated incident. And worse, it turned out many of the photos used by various media outlets to portray this abuse were faked. Where's the story? Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. The media has gone out of its way to portray the detainee facility run by the U.S. military as illegitimate and racist. President Obama even ran his campaign promising that he was going to close this facility once he ascended to the White House. I'm sorry, isn't that still open right now, Mr. Obama? Have you not been the President of the United States of America for a term and now into your second? I must have missed something. I'm sorry. But one thing the media never reported is that the recidivism rate, the rate that these people reoffend, okay, in detainees returning to terror upon release from the facility is very high. Very high. So they had these people. They know they're terrorists. He wanted to bring these people to New York and bring them onto our land. The second they set foot on U.S. soil, they've got all different kinds of rights. Was that the plan, Mr. Obama? Did you want to let him go? Did you feel bad for him? Do you feel bad? Are you ashamed of yourself? Are you ashamed at defending America and getting your hands dirty to do it? Just unbelievable. Ground Zero Mosque. Media outdid itself in the Ground Zero Mosque. This was a battle and always came on the side that wanted to build this mosque on the very grounds where the Muslims murdered so many thousands of Americans back on September 11th. Now, these were radical Muslims. They were. All Muslims are not radical. That's okay. Why do we have to say that? Why do we have to get into that kind of stuff? I mean, don't we know that all Muslims aren't radical? Isn't that kind of obvious that every Muslim can't be radical? So do they say it? So for what? Why would they say that? Why is that so important to state? That so everybody feels that you know that? Because everybody watching, everybody in the world knows that. You want to be compassionate? Is that what it is? Or do you want to deliver the news? They tried to characterize Ground Zero Mosque as just one of many Muslim mosques in the area, but the facts run contrary to what AP, that's the Associated Press, tried to massage into the story. Of course, there are not that many other Muslim mosques in that area, okay? And the fact that they wanted to put one there, well, you know what, it's America, I guess, and if you have the deal with the landlord and all that kind of stuff, nothing we can do to stop it. And there should be nothing we can do to stop it. The government certainly should have nothing to do with stopping it. But where does common sense? Where's the common sense? Probably the same place the outrage was from all of the mosques that you saw. Not until it was noted on Fox News that there was no outrage from the Muslim world did we start to see stories pop up about outrage in the Muslim world. Outrage about 9/11. They were quite happy to just bypass that whole thing. See, folks, that's a problem with the media. And that's why I just sit here and say it straight. Because I'm just talking facts that I can find. I'm just talking my gut as average Joe American, with American interests first, not other countries' interests first. I want to ensure that there's a future here that looks something like the past, that we learn from our mistakes and move forward with freedom. That's what we're all about. That's why the United States was formed. If you think that we should give all of our money and redistribute all the wealth and blah, 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 and all these liberal causes, then this isn't the place for you. There's no iron curtain here. Leave. Obama's uncle's an illegal alien. Why? Why is he here? Where's the outrage? You won't see it. You get a fluff piece every now and then. He's got a court case coming up. They're going to be forced to cover it. Why don't we take a little peek and see how they cover it? I'll try to get some video on it. I'll try to find some stuff on it. But why? And why is it Glenn Beck, I think it was, that had to send somebody down recently? Was it Glenn Beck? Oh, no. I don't think it was Glenn Beck. I think I'm wrong about that. I think that it was O'Reilly that sent somebody down to the liquor store that he works in. So Bill O'Reilly can find this illegal immigrant. Bill O'Reilly can find the guy that's the president's uncle and go down and interview him. But we can't deport the guy? And where's Obama? Where's Obama sitting there saying that this is wrong and get out? Where is he? The double standard's disgusting. It's gross. And it's right in front of you. It's right in front of you. And you either choose to ignore it or you choose to see it, accept that it's there, and work around it. You've got to work around it. We covered an immense amount of ground. There are pages and pages, more stories about media bias. I couldn't print them all, and I couldn't get to all of them in a two-part show. This could be a whole show, just so you know, weekly, on media bias. A whole entire show. 1 hour every week, 52 weeks a year. You still couldn't get through all of it. You want to know why? Because it's true. It's there. And if you want to go find it, do your homework like I told you. Get on the computer. Get off the television that you're watching, the same station for 40 years. You did something right because you found the Freedom Network. I hope I've sparked something, whether I've aggravated you to no end or whether I've made you say, hey, maybe there is a bias here. Either way, I challenge you. If you disagree especially, and if you agree, move forward, my friend, and find your own answers. They're all out there. It's the Freedom Network, folks. It's all about you. It's all about your future. It's all about freedom. We're not going to stop. We're not going to let go. We're not going to stop digging up the dirt on these people that decide to take your freedoms away. Get to me, timagary@gmail.com. Keep them coming. We're getting emails all the time now, and we want more, and we want yours. I want your opinion. I don't have to read anything on air. I don't have to expose anything. I want the opinions. It helps the show. It helps make me better at what I do. And if you want to challenge me, you're always welcome to do so. It's an open forum here on the Freedom Network. I want to thank Tim. Good show. Great time. We will be back again next week with more issues on the Freedom Network.